Hey everybody, it's Captain Kyle and I'm here with Wheeljack, but not just this Wheeljack, but this Wheeljack and this Wheeljack. In fact, we're going to be doing another evolution video on Wheeljack. So we're going to go through all of them from 1984 to the latest release and show you how he's changed throughout the years. Be right back. Alright, so as I said, we have Wheeljack, and we're going to go through all the different versions of the G1 through today. Hey, am I in this thing? No. You're not Wheeljack. You're not my real Wheeljack. No! Oh, come on. Your real Wheeljack went out for a pack of Marlboros and never came back. But I'm here. Are you blind? I have tons of real Wheeljacks. Oh, really? Well, fuck you. Brr. Sorry about that. That movie just causes problems. But let's start with the very first Wheeljack. The year is 1984, and Hasbro launches the first series of a line of toys that would last for almost 40 years. Coming out year after year, well, except for that 1 year that nothing was released in the US. Shame on you, but what can you do? So Wheeljack was released in the very first series of Transformers, based on the Diaclone, and of course, his springs were weakened and stuff. But he's a very handsome robot, as you can see from all angles. Yes, I have a new little turntable set up here. But Wheeljack was a very popular Autobot, particularly because of his role in the 1984 Transformers cartoon, where he invented things and made the Dinobots with simple brains. What were you thinking? It seemed like a good idea at the time. But the thing is with Wheeljack, now this is actually a knockoff reissue because I don't have the original anymore, and they never actually reissued Wheeljack, but somehow these counterfeit companies were able to do so. And he is a fine looking bot. He's got 2 missile launchers right there. I did a full review on this guy, and he's got his spoilers that fall off. And of course, I'm gonna take these missile launchers off for the moment. He's got his wings that can also fall off, just like in the Transformers cartoon and the comic, though he did not have nearly as large of a role in the comic. I guess Bob Budiansky was trying to highlight more Transformers and a little more difficult to bring in Wheeljack for all the issues. But of course he's got issues. A lot of his inventions don't work very well. But whereas he has limited posability, his arm can move around quite a bit, and his head can turn, only because it's part of the transformation. His legs are actually attached and have absolutely no posability. That's why we used imagination in those days. There was no twisting at the waist. But the real beauty of G1 Transformers was the vehicle modes. Because when they were in their vehicle modes, they were gorgeous. They looked like the cars they were supposed to be. You could look at them from any angle. You could put this on a shelf, and most people back then would have no idea this was actually a robot in disguise, which is kind of where the name came from. But they were just beautiful, realistic looking cars that rolled really well, so you could use them as a toy car. Now Wheeljack had a not often used kind of flight mode, because you could put his wings off to the side and he could be flying around. Not as nice looking as Trax. And Trax actually kind of plays into Wheeljack's nearly 40-year history, but we'll get to that in a bit. But that is the G1 version. Now, unfortunately, something happened to the mold. Maybe it got stolen, and that's what these guys are using. But for whatever reason, he was not necessarily reissued as many of the Transformers were. But there was a classics version, and we'll get to that. But after his 1984/1985 appearance, there were actually some of these with rub signs, because that was a way to keep counterfeits off, at least keep people aware of counterfeits. 6 years later, we had the Turbo Racer with Action Master Wheeljack. Yes, a very red car that no one looked at and said that's just a normal toy car, isn't it? Well, maybe they did. You never know. I don't want to speak for them. But it came with a Wheeljack Action Master. I do want to quickly shout out to Tony and Rose of RetroCon for being kind enough to lend me their Action Master Wheeljack because mine I sold quite a few years back. But there he is with his brand new car on The Price is Right. Now, obviously the price for these things has quite gone up, even though Action Masters, which were kind of Hasbro's way of having Transformers compete with things like Star Wars and their very own G.I. Joe and all the other action figures on the market, wasn't a very popular line at the time. A lot of people didn't like Action Masters that much, but they're pretty cool when you think about them. But posability on the figures, not the best. The arms could go all the way around. The head could generally turn, though it's a little stiff. I'm not going to try to turn it all the way around because if the head pops off, then I need to get another one of these for Tony and Rose. The legs had these like ball joint type things, but not the nice ones that we have today. There was like an elastic in there holding it in, but they did bend at the knee, and you could move them out quite a bit and they could do splits. So full Jean-Claude Van Damme. First time he had separate legs. Now his vehicle came with a couple missiles that you could put into his hands as extremely oversized weapons. I mean, seriously, Wheeljack, what exactly are you trying to compensate for with these? Say hello to my little friends! And him trying to hold them, you know, both at the same time, he becomes kind of overbalanced in the front. So you kind of gotta point them at the ground if you want him to stand with those in his hands. The Turbo Racer, which is a very red car, Autobot symbol. Not a ton of stickers, thankfully. Stickers have never been my most favorite thing. But you could transform this car into kind of a jet. The slots on the edges of these fold-up doors look like they should have some kind of wing attachment, but I don't believe there was one. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but... Oh, duh, I forgot. The attachments were the missiles. So it was kind of like a hovercraft, flying vehicle, and you could put Wheeljack inside, along with another Action Master if you wanted to, you know, give him a co-pilot. But that was 1990. A cool vehicle, one of the more expensive of the Action Masters because it came with the car / plane. Now, the original car was a Lancia Stratos. That car was based on the Ferrari Testarossa, a car I will never, ever, ever own. But also in 1990, the original toy was released in Europe in the Classics reissue line. So there was kind of a reissue, but it was back in 1990. But then the mold was lost or damaged or stolen. We didn't see another Wheeljack ever released by Hasbro with that original mold. But wasn't the end for Wheeljack, even though we had to wait another 14 years to see another version of Wheeljack. And that version was the Spy Changer Wheeljack, which was a KB exclusive, I believe, based on Rid Daytonus, who was basically a spy changer from the Car Robots / Robots in Disguise line. But a very cool race car, a nice homage to the original. I am noticing I've had this. This is obviously an original one. There's a slight bit of yellowing on the front, and on the back, but still overall, it's in pretty good shape for its age. Very simple transformation, and it became a race car. With weapon storage, you could actually put the gun, plug it in underneath, and there you go. G1 Spy Changer Wheeljack. Now, I do have to say the posability on this one is even less than G1, because while his arms can go all the way around, the head doesn't turn, and the legs are similarly together. Basically, has to hop around and then fall over. But that was not the end of Wheeljack. And by the way, that mold is originally the GoBot Crash Test from G2, which was not ever released, but would have been had the G2 line continued. But then in 2005, why does that year sound so familiar?
It is the year 2005.
There was a retool of the Alternator Grimlock into an Alternator version of Wheeljack. So Alternators were based on Vinyl Tech, which were released in Japan, and very, very detailed vehicles that changed into much more poseable robots based on original G1 characters. So this is Wheeljack. They had made, obviously, a Grimlock, but they changed the head for this particular Ford Mustang GT S197 chassis model. I sounded like I knew about cars. But a very cool version of the character. He comes with an energy sword, and his engine actually becomes a gun. It's a double-barreled gun that looks like nothing from the G1 or any previous version, but it's a gun. And I'm sure the sword is because Grimlock had one, and why not give him a sword anyway? However, while he had the name Wheeljack and the redesigned head, the coloration was not the original green and red on a white body that we've come to expect. It's an entirely new design. We're gonna put that over here so we can just get into the posability. So alternators were pretty posable. He could almost do a full Jean-Claude Van Damme. The legs go forward and back, though there is some kibble that kind of gets in the way a little bit. So you can do side kicks. He can do a full split. Just a toes up one is pretty difficult, just because of the kibble on his knees, ending up touching a lot of the upper body and causing problems. Now this alternator could twist at the waist, in fact, all the way around. It's got a butt protecting plate. The arms could also go all the way around. They bend at the elbow on a ball joint, and they swiveled. We're gonna just put that aside for now. A little kibble in the way of having wheels on his arms, but not too much you can do. The head could, of course, turn. You could even look way up, and not really far down, because his chin would hit his hood. But overall, a cool figure, a nice homage to the original, released 21 years after the original. But let's check out his vehicle mode, which I have to say, nice. But overall, as I'm doing this, I just want to explain, alternators were incredible feats of engineering. Right, Sky? Speaking of Sky, Sky has her own shirt, you may have noticed it, and you're right in the way of it. But I know that Sky is the reason why you watch this channel, so there's actually a shirt that says I watch Toy Spotlight for the cat, or Sky in this case. So there is alternator Wheeljack in his car mode, and I will say they are incredible pieces of engineering, but they also kind of, they're very complicated to transform. Not easy at all. He is a very cool vehicle. I got him secondhand through eBay. Now, the trunk opens, the doors open, and peeking inside, you can even kind of see it's got a steering wheel here. It's got seats. I mean, it looks like a real model car. And the hood also opens, and that is where you put his weapon, the engine, which honestly I can't figure out how to get them in there, but he is still a very, very cool vehicle. Even the wheels, when you turn in one direction, the front wheels turn in the same direction together. They have little levers in there. So an incredibly cool vehicle, cool robot, just the transformation's kind of a pain in the ass. So the Vinyl Tech version had a slightly remolded head and different paint applications, and it's part die-cast like all Vinyl Tech, but still a beautiful car, either way you want to go, and a great version of Wheeljack. All right, now, it was a few years later, 2011, we have Generations Wheeljack. So Generations Wheeljack is a retool remold of TurboTrax from the same Generations line, which is odd that a Corvette would also be Wheeljack, but he's not really, TurboTrax is not really a Corvette, it's a sports car. I'm not even sure what kind, but they made some remolding differences to the head, and the transformation is different, even though the actual instructions that come with the Generations Wheeljack are the same exact TurboTrax instructions that basically show everything, and you can't exactly follow them. The one that came from United, which was the same year, had a little bit different deco and came with the correct instructions. Whereas Trax had these two things attached back here to kind of be his missiles not shoot out. In this case, they're wrenches that can pop out of his hand. His hands are open, and the gun that Trax uses is actually the missile on Wheeljack's shoulder, as was shown in the cartoon, because the cartoon he only had one missile, unlike the original G1 toy, which had two. But very, very posable. Full Jean-Claude Van Damme. Does bend at the knee, can kick out to the side, can kick forward, though the shield here, the chest shield, kind of gets in the way. I'm kicking very much forward. Doesn't kick too badly backwards either. You can see his heel here. He's got wings. Twisting at the waist. He does twist at the waist, so that's a nice thing. His arms, there's some kibble in the way, so even though his arms could theoretically go all the way around, it ends up hitting his wings and can't actually do it. The head does turn, and the head is very much Wheeljack's head. It's very identifiable. He does have these wings here. You can turn them in if you prefer. They're on the edge of his doors. You can even turn them down if you want him to look a little more like G1 Wheeljack. Like I said, it does show transforming him into Trax, which is totally wrong in the instructions. But overall, a cool figure, posable. Now his vehicle mode looks similar to his original G1 form. But again, I'm not sure what vehicle it's supposed to be. I'm not a car expert, but it is very cool. And you can put him into like a flying car mode, just like Trax, but most people don't, just because that's not really the Wheeljack we know and love. If you want to get something with proper instructions, I definitely recommend getting the Transformers United one, but either one of these is a cool toy. Just be very careful transforming him. If you try to follow the Trax instructions, you could break him, so don't do that. Now, in 2013, they did have the Construct Bots version. I don't have it. I'm not likely to get it. And I mean, it was kind of a Lego style build. And speaking of that, we also don't talk about Creo. So I'm gonna skip those, don't have them. I'd rather move on to another one, which is the MP20 Masterpiece. Now, he is definitely Wheeljack. Looks like the cartoon, though a little bit more realistic. There was a later MP20 Plus that was made that instead of coming with the toolbox, came with the immobilizer, and that was also given to the Masterpiece of Exhaust. But the Masterpiece, very, very accurate in many ways. You can see he's not too kibbly on the back, and luckily only the alternator has the really not Wheeljack colors. We're back to having actual Wheeljack green and red. And in this case, even the logos, Lancia, the Alitalia, whatever that is, and the numbers, as you can see on his door. He's got his shoulder cannon, a handgun, which goes into his hands, which have articulated fingers, and his toolbox, which has a hole in it, but doesn't do too much. It looks like it should separate, but it doesn't seem to want to. Now this is Wheeljack. I'm not sure, this might be a counterfeit of the MP20, but he's a very cool transformer, lots of posability. He can do a full toes up Jean-Claude Van Damme, but you have to kind of balance him for him to stay in that position. He can kick forward very well. He can kick back, he can kick to the side. He does have ankle rockers, which is something that started happening in the mid 2010s, as they say. I guess they call them that. So very posable on the bottom part. Can also twist all the way around at the waist. The arms, hi Sky, I know you love Wheeljack. The arms can go pretty much all the way around, but he's got the wings, so they kind of block it a little bit. Oh, the legs also, you're standing right in the way. The legs can also swivel, by the way, bending at the knee, all that stuff. But the arms, you can kind of put them all the way around if you can sneak past the wings. The head, of course, turns all the way around Exorcist style. So a very, very cool version. I'll put a link to the counterfeit MP20. There may be even a counterfeit MP20 Plus. The MP20 Plus also, in addition to having the immobilizer, was a little bit more accurate, but that didn't come out until 5 years later, 2019. But again, a cool figure. Now, the transformation on these guys is not nearly as complex as the alternators, but they're not that simple either. So just be aware of that. So there is the masterpiece Wheeljack. Again, this is the MP20, not the MP20 Plus, but still a very cool looking vehicle. Very nice red rims, rolls. I just had to test out the Generations version. Rolls pretty well. Is it as good as a G1? G1 can go faster. Not as much resistance. But awesome overall deco. Of course, the MP20 Plus is a little more animation accurate, but this is definitely reminiscent of the G1 toy. Now, there was also a super deformed Q-Transformer Wheeljack. That was a deformed Lancia Stratos. I don't have it. Check out this pic. It's nice if you like the really cute ones. Now, the next one was in 2016. It was the Combiner Wars version of Wheeljack, who could outform Skyrain with Skylinks and other Autobots. Now, because he was Combiner Wars, the design is not exactly as G1 accurate, but he still has the chest plate that is very Wheeljack. He's got the Wheeljack head. He comes with a gun/sword. It could be used as either one. If it's in gun mode, it's also like a bit of a bayonet. And he comes with the fist foot part that can be used as a gun or a hand or foot of Skyrain. Not a bad looking figure. He's got the number on him of 705. I don't know why. I don't know if that's a significant number, but it's certainly not the 539 we're used to. But the Combiner Wars figures, pretty posable. Full Jean-Claude Van Damme, bends at the knee, can kick forward and back. Didn't really have a ankle swivel, but he could kick off to the side. He could twist at the waist, which is actually with a lot of the Combiner Wars because the limbs could sometimes be arms and they wanted to make it a little bit more posable. The arms themselves can go all the way around. You do have a little bit of interference from his backpack Kibble thing, but they bend at the elbow and they swivel, straighten out, and the head turns. Combiner Wars was an interesting line. I don't have all the Combiner War figures, but it's kind of neat that everybody can combine. Can also form one of Legend God Bomber's legs. Now, there was a United Warriors version. Check out the picture. A little redecoed. A lot of times, with some few exceptions, the Japanese redecos usually looked a little nicer. So let's get him into his vehicle mode. Again, not a very complex transformation for these guys, but at least in his vehicle mode, he did look a lot like G1 Wheeljack. So a nice homage to the original. You can see there's a combiner port there. You can put his gun on the top if you like, or you could put this huge gun on the top for additional armament. I don't recall if you could put this weapon somewhere on him for storage while he's in vehicle mode, other than putting this aside and putting it on the top. But still, a good version of Wheeljack, and not too kibbly on the bottom. Now, 2020, a year that will live in infamy, brought out the War for Cybertron Earthrise, which is a cool robot. The vehicle mode resembles a Lancia Stratos with portions being similar to the Lancia Rally. But he was a very cool figure to be released in the Earthrise series. As you can see, very G1 reminiscent. He's got his one gun, which can also go on his shoulder, if you prefer, which makes him a little more G1-ish. Now, he does have sponsor stickers and such, but his number on the side has changed yet again to 638. So if you add up the numbers, 539 or 638, it adds up to the same thing, so that's a numerology thing for you. But I don't know why they keep changing his number. I don't know if there's something wrong with using 539. But he didn't have a massive amount of kibble on the back. You could see his wings were made out of his spoiler, which was kind of neat, instead of having to attach it separately. And it's a cool figure. If we test out the posability, you can certainly do a full Jean-Claude Van Damme and spin. Bends at the knee, kicks forward, kicks to the side, kicks back. Also has ankle rockers, so you can put him in a wide dynamic pose. He can twist at the waist, which makes for even more dynamic poses. The arms can theoretically go all the way around. You kind of have to move the wings out of the way in order to have that happen. Can bend at the elbow. He's got a swivel. The fists themselves can also twist, which is also part of the transformation. And the shoulders, he can shrug a little bit, be down and dejected. The head turns all the way around. I do have to say that the War for Cybertron series, the figures, a lot of them were really, really cool. And compared to the Combiner Wars, definitely a nice departure from that. Combiner Wars had limitations because of the combining factors. This doesn't combine with anybody, but he's very cool. He, of course, transforms into kind of a Lancia Stratus type vehicle. Now, one thing that's interesting is inside his knees are the front portion of the window. So be sure to move that out or it'll pop off. You can definitely pop it back on if it does. It's just, if you want to avoid that, make sure you pop it up properly. The transformation is actually pretty clever as well, with his chest moving down over the legs, and then you have to twist the upper torso afterwards. So there he is in his vehicle mode. Wheeljack, again, 638, not sure why, but he does have some various sponsor labels. Aerobolt instead of Alitalia, whatever that was. Also mentions of Praxis, which wasn't that a Klingon moon? Weird. But again, a very cool vehicle. Weapon storage on the top. Not a lot of kibble on the bottom, though you can kind of see the back of his head. So Netflix put out a War for Cybertron special Netflix version of Wheeljack, and what they did was they gave him some battle damage, and they took off the numbers and the sponsorships. No sponsors to this guy. Sorry, dude. I know how you feel. And very similar in design, just the deco has been changed to match the show. I'm not going to go through all the posability with this guy, or even transform him, because you know what he looks like. Well, I'll transform him real quick, just because he looks so much different, and we'll actually do a side-by-side comparison, especially since he's got so much battle damage. But I do have to say, one of the better transformations of Wheeljack. He looks really good in both modes, but it's also not too complex of a transformation, while still remaining clever. Very clever. So there he is. Again, just removal of the sponsor labels and such. Otherwise, the paint is very similar, except of course for the wear and tear battle damage type stuff. Though there are some coloration changes, such as in the back. You can see the gray, which is basically his part of his arms compared to the black and white. Still very, very similar. And finally, no, we're not doing the Rise of the Beast one. We are actually bringing in the Authentics. So the Authentics version of Wheeljack is kind of a simplified version of the War for Cybertron one. A bit taller. This guy is closer to 7 inches, as opposed to what these guys are, which I think is like 5.5. And he's a little more simplified, a little wobbly. A 3mm port for his gun instead of a 5mm port. But you can again move it to his shoulder if you prefer. His wings are his spoiler. And for a inexpensive version of Wheeljack, I mean, he can still do a full Jean-Claude Van Damme. His arm can fall off just like that, but you can just pop it back on pretty easily. Kicks forward. Can't really kick back that well because this plastic piece, part of his kibble, is in the way, but he can side kick, bends at the knee, doesn't really swivel. So that is one of the things with a less expensive version of Wheeljack that you have. The arms go all the way around. There is no twisting at the waist, but the head itself turns, which is nice. And he can open up his chest to receive the mate. No, he can't. But the arms can fall off pretty easily. The Authentics line are pretty inexpensive transformers. Can read cheap, but they're also, if you like them, which I do, you might want to get this guy. He came out in 2022, still available. I think he was like $9.99, something like that. Or if you're not into the Authentics, you can always provide this to your child if they're into Transformers, but you don't want to give them your really nice ones to potentially break. The feet are a little weird. He does have kind of ankle rockers because of the ball joint, but they're kind of a weird ball joint on a stick, and the arm came off again. So Authentics is an interesting line, but I would definitely say Siege is a little bit better. Transformation is not that different from Siege, but it is a bit simpler. The fists, by the way, don't twist. I don't think you were expecting them to. So there he is in his vehicle mode. Again, it's a Lancia Stratos style vehicle, weapon storage on the top, and he looks pretty good. Definitely has that Wheeljack vibe, just a cheaper package. His leg actually fell off too when I was transforming him. So that is the official characters known as Wheeljack. But there are a couple honorable mentions. Like me? No. Sorry, dude. There is the Energon character known as Downshift, who is also made into this version, who is the Universe Downshift. Now, different character and all, but striking resemblance to Wheeljack. The head is very Wheeljack-like, the chest. So some people actually used Downshift as a Wheeljack. Comes with 2 Energon weapons, a gun, and a missile launcher, which does launch a missile, but I'm not going to shoot it across the room. This guy might come back and eat it. But as an Energon figure, he could also combine. It's got the combination parts under there, so he can combine with other Energon figures to form a larger robot. As far as posability, full toes up Jean-Claude Van Damme. He can kick forward. The joint is kind of weird because it's like in his leg. He can kick somewhat backward, but he's got kibble on the back of his leg that makes it difficult. He can obviously side kick. The arms go all the way around. The feet, there's no actual ankle swivels, but he's got big ass feet, so you can pose him out kind of pretty well. He does not twist at the waist, partly because you can pop that open and make him into a bottom, or he could be a top. The arms go all the way around. He's got these nice shoulder cannons, which is kind of cool. Can bend at the elbow. Fist does not twist. But overall, a cool looking figure. Oh, head turns. Look down and up. And just quickly, as he is an honorable mention, there he is in his vehicle mode. The spoiler is removable, in case you weren't aware. Now, the one from Energon actually looks even more like Wheeljack in vehicle mode. And you can attach for weapon storage his guns on the side. You can even point them forward if you want him shooting people in that direction. But yeah, it's a nice homage that they did at the time. They didn't call him Wheeljack, but Downshift is definitely an homage. And our final is the Earth Spark flip changer. Now I'm hoping in Earth Spark that they make a better Wheeljack, one that's actually in proportion to the rest of them, maybe a deluxe version. It's a cool looking vehicle and a great homage to the original. Though this is one of those flip changers that's kind of a little bit of a pain to keep in his robot mode. And posability is like nothing to speak of. But again, he is a flip changer. Toss him on his back and he will transform. So there you have it, all the Wheeljacks. And it's a pretty amazing homage and kind of a compliment to the character who was named by Bob Budiansky, who invented Dinobots with simple brains. And just for him to continue on as a character for all these years, pretty much all the G1s are enshrined for us to just see them come back again and again. Some way too many times. It's a shame what they did in the friggin' movie. Yeah, shut up. But Wheeljack is a cool character. I have seen people in cosplay of him. And I am going to put links to all these guys in the description. You can get vintage or you can get knockoff reissue counterfeits. I mean, they pretty much look the same. I ain't going to judge you. I really hope you enjoy these videos. I haven't done an evolution one in a while. And let me know which one you want to have me do next. I'll give you some choices. RC, Hound, Cup, or Shockwave. Let me know in the comments below which one you want. And while you're mulling over these guys, you can check out over here, we have the evolution of Cosmos, or the green guy, as Michael McConaughey likes to call him. We'll see you next time. As always, have fun and good hunting.